If you've been keeping up with the course, this brief should look familiar. In this video, we're going to redo the section you see on the screen using an advanced grid this time. I'm going to pull up this grid drawing one last time to remind you that setting up our advanced grid is very similar to completing the drawing on the screen. When using an advanced grid, you'll need to break down your brief into smaller sections in a grid-like manner. So let's get started. We'll begin by marking up our brief, but this time, we're going to draw a red box around all my content. This red box represents the main advanced grid we will be using. The next step is to define how many rows and columns our advanced grid will have. The easiest way I determine this is by looking at the smallest container, or I guess containers in this case. So the size of these two boxes will dictate the number of columns we'll need to use. So we've decided we'll add a column here to separate these two and another one over here to divide our space in half. Of course, since we have one column on this side, we'll need a second column over here as well. We now have 4 columns. Next, we need to decide how many rows. Here, it's pretty obvious that the space that divides these elements is going to inform how many rows we have, so let's add another line here to indicate that we'll need 2 rows. You'll notice this design is going to be a little interesting since we have an element that bleeds into these 2 grid cells below. So that's what our advanced grid should look like. So let's head on over to the editor. I'll begin by adding an advanced grid. And I'm going to quickly take care of all this extra spacing and make the advanced grid a little bigger. Now let's set up the rows and columns. Remember, we need 4 columns and 2 rows. And to finish setting up our advanced grid, I am going to add the gap between our grid lines. Now that our advanced grid has been set up, let's start building. I'm going to begin with the left side again. I wouldn't usually suggest using an image widget as a background, but for this example and to highlight how the grid can overlap elements, I'll go ahead and use one. Next, let's add some text. Notice once again how you can freely place the widget anywhere within the advanced grid by dragging and dropping. But if you would rather have more precise control, you can do this from the alignment property. Now let's add our button. Notice these pink lines appear in the editor called Smart Guides, signaling where you're going to drop the element. Now let's work on the right side. Instead of using an image widget though, I'm going to spice it up by using another advanced grid. And this time, I'm not going to section this off like we did with our main advanced grid. I want to demonstrate that you can achieve similar results without being as rigid. However, I still recommend dividing your grids properly, as this will ultimately lead to a more precise pixel-perfect design. Let's add the 3 round images first. And I'm just going to duplicate this shape 2 more times. For now, let me just place these in the middle. If we compare the behavior of widgets inside an advanced grid versus widgets inside a column, one main difference is that columns automatically handle the position and spacing of your widgets. Unlike grids, you'll need to trust your eye and rely on the smart guides to make sure everything looks centered just right. Let's add the text widget and a button. And lastly, we want this container to spill into the 2 bottom grid cells, so let's take care of that. Next, let's add the 2 smaller blocks. And this time, I'm going to use an inner column as my container. Remember, unlike advanced grids, columns don't let you freely drag and drop widgets inside them. Instead, you control the positioning of the widgets from the column's content alignment and spacing properties. Lastly, I'm just going to duplicate this last container and quickly update its content and design. Finally, I'll add some finishing touches like rounding the corners of the other containers with a corner radius. And we're finished. There you have our design. Now let's take a look at the other 2 breakpoints. As you can see, the tablet version inherits the same layout and design from the main breakpoint. Let's switch over to the mobile view now. You'll notice that it tries to render a version based on the inherited rules. Since our advanced grid was set to 4 columns and 2 rows on the main breakpoint, it tries to fit everything into that setup. However, the 4 column by 2 row setup that works well for desktop might not be ideal for mobile, as it can end up looking like this. An advantage of Editor 2.0 is that you can customize the advanced grid layout per breakpoint. So for our mobile breakpoint, I'm going to change the layout of the advanced grid to only 1 column and 4 rows instead. Here, I can move elements around freely, to create a layout that's completely different from the other breakpoints. Keep in mind that since the editor is trying to render a version of the layout from the main breakpoint, a more complex layout with multiple rows and columns, such as this one, will likely result in a mobile version looking a little funky. So we might need to resize and reposition some elements to make sure they look good on mobile. And if y'all remember, we used an image widget for the background instead of a container, so the text and the button are direct children of our main advanced grid, in case you're wondering why the button stayed behind. The key takeaway is that advanced grids let you create intricate and unique layouts for each breakpoint.